YouTube, what's up? Back again for another daily fishing video here on Andrew Upshaw Fishing. First and foremost, guys, I want to say Happy New Year to you all. You know, this is the first video of 2022, and I can't wait to get the season started. We got a lot of things coming down the pipe this year. Co-hosting Let's Fish TV for 15 episodes, as well as YouTube and 9 Bassmaster Open. So I'm going to be all over the place doing all kinds of different things. So make sure y'all stay tuned for a ton of different things that are going on. You know, but today I have a really special video for you because if any of you watch my channel, you know one of my favorite things to do is finesse fish. And it's not even just finesse fishing, but I like to use small baits. I think small baits are highly underrated. I think you can catch a lot of really big fish on small baits. But I'm going to tell you guys, my favorite time to catch fish on big fish on small baits is right now. You know, if you watch my last video, it was right before the new year. It was talking about catching big fish in December. And I caught a really big fish, around 8 pounds. This is the fish right here. And I caught it on a small bait. I actually caught it on a 2.75-inch Rage Swimmer. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. But hey, real fast though, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, here, do that real quick. It's in the bottom right-hand corner, my left side. And just go hit that button real fast. And it'll make my life way easier. You know, this time of year, small baits definitely can load the boat. You can catch a lot of fish with really tiny baits. But you can also catch that fish of a lifetime too. And there's kind of a couple different places where I use small baits. Let's just start up shallow. Shallow water in January, sometimes people look at it and say, man, I'm not going shallow. Those fish have to be out there on those channel turns and out deep and all that. But that's not necessarily the case. You know, there's a lot of really giant fish that live in 1, 3 to 4 foot of water year round. And they never leave. And so in that situation, I'm looking at crankbaits. You know, I'm not going to waste my time fishing a lot of other stuff, worms and jigs and stuff like that, especially in 1 to 6 foot of water. I'm mainly going to be using a crankbait. And in this case, I'm using 2 different crankbaits. The first one that I'm going to reach for is a KVD 1.0. This is a tiny little crankbait. This is one I really like fishing in the fall, but I also really like fishing it in the pre-spawn or that winter to pre-spawn transition. You know, this one I just cut off my rod, Chartreuse and Black. I think this is actually called Chartreuse Perch. I use both of them, Chartreuse and Black and Chartreuse Perch. That faded Chartreuse Perch actually works really, really well. And it reminds me of the old school RC 1.5 when we used to put it in the dash to make the color fade. It's a really similar color to that. So this is one I turn to. I throw red, I throw shad patterns, stuff like that. But that 1.0 definitely can catch a bunch of fish. Now, in situations where I'm throwing this 1.0, I'm going to fish it around grass. It's a fantastic grass bait. Kind of like the same way you would throw a hybrid hunter, a lipless crankbait, something like that. I'm going to fish it in the same exact situation, but downsize that bait, especially if I have a high-pressure day or there's a bunch of people fishing the same grass beds as me. That's a perfect situation. Or I'm going to focus on rock. Rock is king this time of year. You know, especially when you have cold fronts that roll in, the first place that the sun's going to hit, those rocks are going to warm up the fastest and you're going to catch more fish off of them. Just proven fact. And in this situation, especially if they're sitting higher in the water column in that 1 to 3 foot range, I'm going to turn to that 1.0. It definitely will catch a really big one. And it's something I fish a lot this time of year. I throw it on 10-pound line exclusively. I don't go any higher. It's just, I'm very confident in 10-pound with it, and it works really well. So if you want to fish that 1 to 3 foot range, that 1.0 is definitely the crankbait for you. Now, if I get from that 3 to 7 range, that's when I'm going to turn to a Rapala. This is a Shad Wrap. This is a size 5. Now, the colder the water, the smaller the crankbait I'm going to fish. I've caught some of my biggest fish ever throwing this little tiny Shad Wrap. It's scary to fish. And I'll be honest with you guys, I've lost a lot of really big ones on it. I haven't really perfectly found the right combination of hooks and line and everything like that. You're going to lose some big fish on this crankbait. The problem with it is a lot of times they're so lethargic when they come up to eat this thing. They grab it by that back hook, and you typically have them with one treble. And in that case, you got to really play them hard. You got to let them do whatever they're going to do. Sometimes they break you off. Sometimes they just jump and throw it. Luckily, this time of year, especially with the cold water, they don't like to jump too much. But, man, one jump is all it really takes if you're not careful. But I always change my trebles on it. I'm throwing it on a spinning rod, 10-pound braid to 6-pound fluorocarbon. And the reason I throw the 6, it's not because I think the fish can see it, but the bait will actually get deeper in the water. And that's extremely important with that Shad Wrap. I want to get it as deep as I can and crank it as slow as physically possible. I want to crawl that thing across the bottom. I want to count the rocks as it's wiggling through there. And that tight wobble, that Shad Wrap definitely will load the boat with you. Now, once we get out of the shallow water, then we're going to go offshore. You know, and this time of year, the bass tend to group up offshore. Now, granted, most of the groups of fish out there are going to be smaller fish. They're going to be 2 to 4 pounds. You might catch a 5 or 6 pounder randomly. But sometimes you'll catch a giant. And in those situations, I'm really turning to 3 baits. I'm searching with my favorite search bait, which is a 2.75-inch rage swimmer, putting it on a 1/4 ounce head. This is actually a guppy head. A buddy of mine, Matt Steffen, designed this thing for dirty jigs. And it's just the perfect jig head for this particular swim bait. I'm going to use this with any forward-facing sonar that I have. And I'm going to really target those particular fish. Or I'm just going to target structure. So like if it's a rock pile, around a brush pile. And that's one thing forward-facing sonar does that we don't talk about enough. Instead of just trying to find fish, you can actually fish effectively around targets. So if you have a big, tall brush pile, I can aim my forward-facing sonar. I can see the brush pile, and I'll know exactly how to cast to the edge of it to hit that edge cast, or even over the top or the sides, whatever it may be, and be able to target those fish. There's so much versatility with a swim bait, especially that really small rage swimmer. So it's definitely one of the first baits that I throw. Now, if you get in an open water situation and you're dealing with schools of fish that are swimming around eating shad out in the middle of the lake in open water, or even sometimes not even in open water, but kind of around timber or whatever it may be, I'm turning to 2 different baits here, and both of them I've caught gigantic fish on. 8+ pound bass. I think the biggest one I've caught on a spoon is right at 10 pounds. But a little spoon, there's a couple different ones I use. I use either the War Eagle spoon, Cotton Cordell is one that I used in the beginning. And I've really turned to that Mark Rose ledge spoon a lot because it has a swivel in the base of it. And so it eliminates, or in the head of it, it eliminates having to have that swivel up top. And most of these spoons, I always used to add a swivel. Well, now with that Mark Rose spoon, it's built in, so you don't have to worry about that. And it comes with a good hook. It's a 1 ounce. So there's certain situations that I need a half, like this is a half right here, and it's a smaller spoon. So in the case of this video, tiny baits catching big bass, I'm going to talk about the 1/2 ounce spoon. That's the one I like to fish. If I need to downsize that bait, once again, if it's a pressure situation, if there's a bunch of boats around, high pressure situations, we have those all month long, it seems like. It's like you'll have a couple of days that are perfect weather, the fish are just chewing, and then you don't. You have those days that it's like, man, I cannot get a bite. That's when you got to downsize these baits, and that's when you're going to be the most effective with them. The last bait I'm going to talk about, and the reason I'm doing it last is because it's one of my favorites, and if you've made it this far, you deserve a nugget, and that is a tail spinner. A tail spinner is something I learned at Toledo Bend, and I've taken it literally everywhere across the country and caught bass on it. And guys, this is a big fish killer. You can once again fish it a bunch of different ways. You can drag it on the bottom, you can hop it, you can cast and reel it. You can do so many different things with this bait, and it catches really big fish, especially in clear water. You can do it around brush piles. There's so many ways you can fish it. This thing was designed, I want to say it was on Lake Eufaula, and they used to catch gigantic bags around timber. So if that tells you anything, you can fish this thing around timber pretty effectively. I've gone through a bunch of different ones, and I haven't really found a favorite yet as far as tail spinner. I still use the old school rinky dink, which is also the wing ding. I use this one. I like fixed hooks one sometimes, depends on the situation. Once again, a really good live scope or forward-facing sonar bait. But overall, you can't be discouraged about picking up a tiny bait and expecting not to catch a big one. I've caught big ones on every single one of these baits. And this time of year is a great time of year to catch the biggest fish of your life. So if you go out there and you're saying, man, I got to throw a 10-inch worm, I got to go throw a 10XD, I got to do all these big things to catch these big bass, that is not the case, guys. I promise you, if you really pay attention, you throw these little tiny baits, and have the confidence that you're going to catch fish on them, you're going to catch fish with them. So, guys, I hope y'all enjoyed this episode. I hope you learned a little bit about fishing tiny baits this time of year and a few of my favorite ones that definitely will help you load the boat. And maybe, just maybe, it will help you catch a big one. Guys, I hope y'all enjoyed this episode. I'll see you on the next one.